All right, welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. I am your host, David Carr, Steward of Business, once again, and we have another new guest on the podcast. I'm super excited to have Matt Kemp with us. I got to meet Matt through Business to Business networking group, Success Champions Network, last year, and we had some great conversations. And I said, "Well, you got to get on the podcast, Matt, because your background in hiring, talent acquisition, business growth, helping veterans. There's a whole host of things here that I think are really important for our listeners to get to take in, Matt. So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Matt, you're the manager and you manage and operate dialed in staffing was one of your things. And you have the Red 7 strategy group. And so I just thought, for those when we're recording this at the beginning of March 2025, things in the hiring space, wherever this may be a very interesting conversation because there's things that we're watching in the federal government that's changing hiring and firing and moving things around. We are looking at people that are dealing with challenges or things that are developing with technology. And I think this is just going to be a really interesting discussion because one of the things I help companies with, as you know, Matt, is organizational health. It's developing the team and making sure they're intact. But obviously, you're bringing in key talent. You're helping them find key talent. And so I'd love to get your background in what got you going with dialed in this mission to help people doing executive searching and recruiting, because to me, even though we have ups and downs in the economy and things, there's always seeming a need for the right people in the right places. And
Mhm.
so you feel, a very important need out there.
Yeah, I mean, I started up dialed in staffing in early 2023, which was kind of the
Mhm.
worst economic climate for this industry in the last 10 years. And it's just been full of challenges ever
Mhm.
since then.
Mhm.
But again, that's kind of the cream rises to the top or baptism by
Mhm.
fire. There's a variety of different ways you could look at it.
Yep.
But I think it really just stems down to whenever it comes to being a business owner and kind of any industry, there's it's not really easy ever.
Yeah. Yep.
There's some good times and some bad times, but just being able to navigate those ebbs and flows of just kind of all things. Like
Mhm.
we saw a lot of changes through the pandemic. We
Mhm.
saw a lot of changes post pandemic. Then now we kind of have AI coming in and kind of messing with everybody's industry. And then now
Yep.
we have, a tumultuous time within the government and the government
Mhm.
contracting space.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think that as, given the current state of just things, everything in the world right
Mhm.
now, uh, by me starting my business in early 2023, like this is kind of par for the course for me.
Mhm.
Nothing has
Mhm.
been really easy, but you just have to find a way to navigate it because it's either that or close down your business.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
the only two options there. So
Mhm.
it's either victory or death. One way to look at it because the world, the market, everything is going to keep throwing you challenges, and you just have no choice
Mhm.
to navigate them.
Mhm. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and um, that's I just had a woman on my podcast that we were recording episode yesterday, kind of talking about similarly the challenges, the ups and downs, and really learning where to pivot. And sometimes it's not huge. It's knowing to make slight moves, and not wholesale moves. It's just understanding that, but staying engaged for sure. And I think some business owners I found, Matt, and I think this is why it's important with what you're doing is they struggle with like, can I find the right people to bring into my company? And knowing that they get stuck within themselves and realizing, hey, who who's else is out there that can help me so I'm not alone in this journey. I'm sure as a business owner starting in 2023, you're like, I'm just going to do this all by myself and I'll figure it out. It's like, no, right? You and I got into Success Champions Network as an example because we wanted to
Right.
network with other business owners, learn from other business owners, and I think that's so important. And it to me, that's part of like how do you navigate and ultimately be successful. So kudos to you for keep figuring out okay how to work this, rework it, and like you said, right now we're looking at shifts in kind of the hiring market. What are some of there's different things with economic trends that we're seeing and workforce development. So what do you see right now, currently, that for employers, I'm just going to is a gap that employers need to think about, uh, for finding the right people, like retaining the right people? What are some of the things you're seeing for companies?
So the last, we'll just say 9 months
Mm-hmm.
has been very unique in the sense that we had a lot of conversations with a lot of senior folks at large companies that basically said, and this is kind of mid to late last year, we don't
Yep.
have any budget until post election. And the more folks you talk to, they said, at this point, we don't even care who wins. We just need this thing to be over with so that we can get
Mm-hmm.
some market stability. We can get our budget back. We can get our head count. So starting basically January 15th,
Yep.
that's whenever, from a sales perspective, everybody just
Uh-huh.
started piling on with the follow-ups because they've been hearing nothing but, at least in the staffing and recruiting space, nothing
Mm-hmm.
but we have no budget post-election, post-New Year. We need to figure out what the markets are doing, and this and that. So uh, that was unique to this election cycle because last election cycle was the middle of a pandemic. The one before that
Mm-hmm.
was pre-pandemic. So it's like we had no we had no case studies for how to navigate this political cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then now I think within the hiring space, now we have an insurgence of AI. Me as an ops person within an agency I get pitched AI solutions daily,
Yeah.
almost definitely weekly, and I think that from senior managers within companies that I've talked to, we'll just say a director is being asked by their VP, what AI solutions are you bringing in? Uh, they don't know, so then now they have to go, talk to somebody who knows about AI. Well, does
Yep.
this person just have a Chat GPT wrapper solution, or is this something that they built, built from the ground up? So
Yep.
I think as much as AI is a buzzword, there's
Mm-hmm.
it's very common for folks to just not know what those solutions need to be. Are they,
Mm-hmm.
long term, short term, and
Yep.
things like that? Because
Mm-hmm.
on the candidate side of things, uh, they're getting pitched, use AI to revamp your resume, to navigate these ATSs and things like that. Which, I mean, I don't see the value in that particularly. But then again, I look at every single resume. All of my recruiters look at every single resume. We're not
Mm-hmm.
relying on, an AI scrubber to just pop out the top three. And
Yep.
other good recruiters are doing that same thing. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever it comes to just kind of managing the entire recruiting process, it now seems that there's more noise for a senior leader who wants to hire correctly and do it
Mm-hmm.
efficiently. Now that you have turmoil in the job market, it's been difficult for a while. And then you have AI solutions, so there's a lot of noise to kind of figure out what the best solution is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of what I've seen is just hands on, eyes on, kind of having somebody to uh, do it the right way.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Matt, in that I see a lot of business owners try to figure out like some kind of silver bullet, like the AI is going to be this or whatever. It doesn't, this is just the tool right now, right?
Right.
That's going to do it. And they don't realize like it requires more than that. Like you said, the hands-on, I mean, we're maybe using part of the tool, but not, it's an
Mhm.
auto, a single, you know, answer to the challenge and the problem. And I think and then like you said, it gets noisy and they're not getting the results that they want because
Mhm.
they're just kind of like, oh, let me just pick up this one. This one seems to be like the hot thing, and I'll see if this works. So
Mhm.
I can see, but both on the employer side and the employee side, both are, the candidate, because they may think, oh, same thing. Oh, this will be the answer to my question. I'll just be able to do this and it'll work. And it's like, well, not exactly. And so then you're both, there's a gap, there's a missing on both sides of this. That's clear to me.
Well,
What
whenever
you're
I
sharing.
talk to folks that are in a noisy situation like that, whether it
Hmm.
be on the candidate side or the hiring manager side or the employer side, it's kind of like I said, follow the money. If somebody's screaming at you that this is mandatory that you have to do that, I mean, are they selling an AI resume solution? Maybe. Are they an advocate? If somebody's screaming that, oh, you need to automate your sales process by having VAs that are utilizing chat, whatever the case is, then follow the money. Is that a solution that they're selling? Even getting back to going over to veteran-owned small businesses, I talk about SBA certifications and leveraging that to do XYZ. Because
Yep.
I consult with veteran businesses to do just that. So it's
Yep.
kind of understanding why somebody has the perspective they do versus, this is, this is the only tried and true way. And I think this goes back to, kind of your last question of, whenever I started up my staffing business, I was a sales and strategic partnership guy. That's kind of as deep as my business knowledge went. And there's a lot of things that go into owning a business, especially one
Yes.
that's a little bit more complex, like a staffing firm. So I approached it very humbly. I wanted to talk to every single person that was smarter than me. There are a lot of those. So I was able to talk to a lot of people that, just were experts or subject matter experts in their industry.
Yeah.
So that just kind of a knowledge gaining effort right there on the front end, saved me a lot of heartache on the back end. And that's kind of what I try and do on the, on the veteran side. It's like, hey, I have 2 years in this small business ownership path. Let me collapse everything that I've learned in the last 2 years for you in 3 months. And then you can just get right to where I am. You can skip all the nonsense, skip all the mistakes. I've learned them for you. Let's just expedite this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you bring up, the whole veteran side of things is really unique, Matt. As we've talked about before, my background before I started Steward Your Business was in the environmental consulting space. I worked with a lot of veteran business owned enterprises, for example. And it's one thing, like, okay, go get a certification. Okay, that's great. But then actually, how do I, like you said, run the business, get the right people, get the contracts in place, all that? That's a lot of stuff. And if you're just trying to do it on your own and just, you know, hire somebody or find somebody like you, Matt, that, it's like, hey, I've already gone through this. Let me help you. And I've pulled a lot of resources so you don't have to, you can go faster. And this is the whole reason I have the Business Roundtable podcast, is that they can meet people like yourself, Matt, and say, oh, there's somebody else here that knows this. How do I talk with them? I connect with them. It's like, great. And then why I do what I do is find people in, whatever industry that you need, that are further along, or they're experts, and they'll help you move that along, knowing where you're not as strong on that. And so a lot of businesses I find are not strong just the bringing on people, finding the right people, right, Matt? And they know how to do the technical part of the business. They got it set up, they got it going, but actually, like, what does it look like to describe a position, and actually have the right people coming? How many times have you probably had somebody like, these are not ideal clients? I mean, I've heard recruiters where that not, unfortunately, not really what good recruiters, because they're just like, well, they're just doing a little checkbox, but it's not a good fit.
Right.
The business owner's frustrated, right? Because they're like, so, like, can you talk a little bit about some maybe proven strategies that you're seeing or implementing to help the employers, number one, bring the right people? Because there's, again, a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of mechanisms that people can find the companies, and so it's like, how does dialed in staffing, differentiate itself in helping companies really attract key, people to their organization?
I mean, we impress a lot of clients right off the bat, just because it's maximum effort. And I feel like, before I started Dialed in Staffing, I worked at 2 different, conglomerate agencies. And I think it's easy to not be as hungry whenever, you're not the captain of your own ship. So it's like, I have a zero tolerance for losing clients. So that's the impression, like that's the frame of mind that we're in as soon as we get our very first role. Now, on top of that, not being part of a large conglomerate, you're able to run some strategic ad placements. You're able to do your proactive outreach, things that don't really get done when you're with a big shop, just because at scale, is it worth the investment on it? And, for a lot of different reasons, but we're able to just use all channels available. It'll eat into the margin a little bit, but because we're a smaller shop, everybody's still able to get paid what they need to for their time and effort. And I think all of those things considered, we're able to jump in to a difficult role to fill and use pretty much everything that we have at our disposal to not only get great folks in the pipeline, But
Yep.
that first round of feedback is incredibly important because they say, this
Hmm.
person was a great fit because of these 3 reasons. We don't think they're going to be a match for these 3. And then you roll that into screening your next round. And then, we always want folks to get offered and, hired right off the first round
Yeah.
uh, of searching, but sometimes that's not always the case, but you have to continue to refine that.
Yep.
And again, there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of recruiters that just don't do that.
Hmm.
They're gonna post an ad or they'll post something to LinkedIn. They'll kind of scroll some resumes and then send 1 or 2 over. Like they just not. You'd be surprised how many other companies are not doing maximum effort, and
Mm.
that's just that's just the way we approach every single client, every single role. Because for me, as a sales and strategic partnership person, I refuse to leave money on the table. This is if the opportunity is there, take the opportunity. Don't let it flop just because you
Hmm.
don't want to, or it's hard, or it's going to take a lot of time. Like you just do it. Maximum effort, maximum, client happiness equals, maximum business success.
Going all in. I love it.
Yeah.
Matt, what would you say, Matt? So when you're like, hey, I'm going to go all in. What would you say to a potential client you're going to hire, a company, or they're going to hire you? What would you say to them? Like, what should they be considering? How should they be set up, like, to help you get you do all the like maximize? Like, hey, I'm going to tap in Matt. I'm going to bring him on and his team to really help me. But what would you say to them? Because to what do they need to be prepared to provide you? What are the things that they should be thinking about before hiring a recruiter? Because sometimes I think again, silver bullet, oh, I hired this recruiter, they'll just solve my problems. But they're like, hey,
Mhm.
it's only you can only do as much as what they give you and prepare you and provide you, right, Matt? If you're like, so what should an employer think about for attracting and retaining top talent? One of the things that you're like, hey, if you guys give us this, boom, we're going to be able to do maximum effort, really make an impact. But because I don't think businesses, especially if they've never hired a recruiter, Matt, know these things, and so that we can help educate them and understand, get them up to speed.
Right. Well, I mean, there's some best practices that we establish on the front end.
Hmm.
Quick decisions, quick feedback
Hmm.
is going to be the biggest one. I think every single recruiter or staffing firm or recruiting agency, quick feedback has always been a real pain point, and that's
Hmm.
because candidates that are excited about the role or they're excited about interviewing at your company, they want to know if they're moving forward or not, so that they can investigate other opportunities. A lot of
Hmm.
candidates, a lot of top candidates have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 irons in the fire. And if you
Mm.
don't move them through the process quickly, you're going to lose them.
Yep.
And that's pretty standard across any industry.
Yep.
But then let's say they know exactly who they want. Job description has been very well done. Everybody's on board from a stakeholder standpoint. They give the great feedback. Well, then they get hired. Well, then what do you do after that? Do you have a good company culture? How is your
Yep.
onboarding? What's your 30, 60, 90?
Yeah.
Are there expectations that are set up before they even sign their offer letter? How are you communicating with that? There's a lot of just general leadership and company health things uh, that we want to make sure that they're already doing, because we don't want to place somebody in a role and then 2 months later they say, find me another job, this place is terrible, it was not a good
Yep.
fit. Because
Hmm.
then the client's not happy, the candidate's not happy, and then it's just not a great way for the whole process to run.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, man. I mean, I don't think business owners calculate the the cost of employee turnover and what does that take. It's hard, to completely monetize, but when you lose somebody and have to backfill and all the time it takes to get them up to speed and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, doing this stuff on the front end is super important. I hear totally what you're saying about being, proactive and being responsive. I've been in a place where we work with recruiters, and I understand the frustration from a recruiter side of like, you guys hired us, but you're not prioritizing getting us back and feedback, and so
Right.
therefore it feels like we're failing you because now we keep losing people. I think, just to reiterate your point, Matt, if you're an employer and you're not purposely blocking out time to review and respond, and you're like, you're just going to figure out you're going to squeeze it in something else with everything else that you've got going on, then that's a recipe for disaster. You have to be really intentional if you're going to bring on somebody like Matt or anybody else as an outside party, you have to be really intentional. And then your other point that you brought up, Matt, I think is super important. And this is one of the things I focus on Steward Your Business of that developing the onboarding process and what is the culture and how are you going to integrate this person? And so speak to a little bit more about kind of what you've seen as successful as far as, kind of emotional intelligence, adaptive, how do we adapt them, personality. And so maybe, why is the company culture maybe a bigger hiring factor than maybe businesses realize?
Well, I think we've all had jobs that suck, and it's just not a great time.
Yeah.
I vowed to never have a job that sucked again after my last one.
Yeah.
And so the next few companies that I worked for, I made sure that they were really great. And I kind of share that perspective with every single candidate that I talk to that's coming into the process, because that's important to what's a good fit, like what's your preferred management style. Do you even want a management style? Do you like to be a ton? It's just all of these things that if you don't ask, you don't know. And then on the management side, it's who's your ideal person? What's the team dynamic? Do you need somebody to come in here and put on their headphones and just drill out a list of 43 things to do every single day? Or do you need somebody to spin around in their chair, talk to their buddy next to them, chat folks up in the other department? Or is there more of a deeper integration that needs to happen into that company culture? And again, just getting those questions answered on the front end, that saves you a whole bunch of heartache on the back end. Because if there's an introvert that wants to be in an introvert team and just wants to have their own space and just knock out their list of things to do, but they have a manager that wants to take everybody to lunch and do hourly powwows and do all of these things, then it doesn't mean that they're not qualified for the job, but that is not going to be a culture fit that they're going to engage in and flourish in. And nobody wants to dread the drive to work in the morning.
Man, yeah. Well, I mean, definitely. I mean, the connection between strong leadership and successful hiring. So, like, yeah, like you said, how are we building this high performance team? You brought up some good points. Are we looking for some? What do you need in the company? Of, like you said, is it just purely an implementer, like just literally going through those points, or do you need somebody that's an innovative or creative? And recognizing, as you bring on, even in the best situation, I call it the storms of change. But anytime you bring somebody in there, there's going to be this, calibration in there. So are you being really intentional about what does that look like? And what I found too, I don't know about your experience, sometimes we're like, okay, we need this person, like, and they think that, especially if it's a higher level person, and yes, they're completely capable, but, like, again, how are we going to integrate them and assimilate them into our team? And sometimes they just drop them in and, like, okay, we'll just drop them in here, and then they'll somehow, because they've been successful. There's no question they've been successful in certain places, but like you said, do they love their job? Or do they feel like a fabric of this? Because I've gone into, it's just, I've been into other organizations, and yes, I can make it work, but it's just a lot more energy and it's harder, and versus somebody that's being very intentional about, uniting the team and all the folks that are working together.
Well, it's like, do you want to bring somebody in who is a disruptor and then not have them disrupt? Or do you want to bring somebody in that upholds the status quo and just, glides in seamlessly? Because from a sales perspective, I've seen some really good questions to ask. Are you bringing in somebody who has scaled startups to 10 million, or somebody who's done 10 to 100, or somebody who's done 100 plus? Because that type of growth and that type of mindset needed are all three vastly different. And has somebody been 10xing a 5-person team or 2xing a 100-person team? Just because they have been successful, it's does that type of success fit in? For me, being a business owner for the last 2 years, I would never want to go work for a 20 or 50 person sales team. It's just
Uh-huh.
it's no longer in my DNA. I don't want to be part of it. So it's like even if a capable sales and strategic partnership person were put in a situation that I would be able to succeed, it kind of goes back to that more culture fit or job dynamic fit
Uh-huh.
specifically for that person. But for somebody to just be successful, what does that mean? Does that success translate to what this exact position needs?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, so the follow-up question to that, Matt, is like, what would you say for businesses to create like a hiring system that can grow with them? Because like you said, maybe at this certain scale, they're okay, and to think of how to think about how to scale and grow their team. I mean, there's like sometimes there's immediate needs, and there's also um, kind of asking two different questions there, but there's an immediate need sometimes, and then there's like hiring, like I implement now, and then I need also people that I can see for long-term success, like long-term growth. And so just speak a little bit about how growing and scaling your team, kind of developing this hiring system process, both for immediate needs and kind of this longer term growth.
Well, I think budget plays a big part in that, and it can be scary. So what I've done is create a very high commission 1099 structure for my
Uh-huh.
business, because just starting out, worst economic climate for for our industry, taking on a large loan to supplement a handful of folks' salary for the first 6 months, 9 months, year, whatever it is, that was just such an unbearable risk that I then had to basically flip what the commissions were versus a 10% commission to a 70 or 80% commission. So then
Mhm.
that way you have folks that are still able to support you. It's going to be worth their while, but
Yep.
you're still able to move your clients forward with obviously considerably less margin than if you were doing it
Mhm.
yourself. But
Mhm.
so for me at the very front end, you don't have to have a $500,000 budget to kick off your team of sales folks or ops folks or whatever the case is. You can get a little more creative with it. You can get a little bit more non-traditional. For me in the staffing space, that has worked very well from both a sales point of view, from a recruiting point of view. All things that I'm not able to do myself.
Uh-huh.
Having 1099 partnerships is a very easy way for me to scale.
Yeah.
Whenever you start getting into more projectionable revenue, and then you actually have a budget, stick to your budget and just do what your budget allows.
Yeah.
Because if you all of a sudden have an immediate need, you can hire some short-term contractors that are W-2 through a company like mine to do a 6-month project to get you to get your work where it needs to be without having those long-term budget implications. But
Mm.
if you set aside $100,000 for your people budget, then hire somebody for $100,000 if you've established that they're going to be a critical part of your team. So
Mhm.
it's scary whenever you start forking over long or large sums of money.
Yep.
But if that role not being filled is holding back progress of an entire vertical or the entire company, like you have to do it. That's the risk involved.
Yep.
But you always, just weigh the pros versus cons. Where are we going to be in 6 months or a year if we do not hire this person?
Right. Right.
Where are we going to be in 6 months or a year if we have them show up to work tomorrow? Does that make dollars and cents? If it
Mhm.
does, then utilize your budget to do what you need to do. Same
Mhm.
thing rolls into marketing, into CRMs and infrastructure and payroll, like all the things. Like it'd be great if I could just do all of these things all by myself, but I can't. For me to
Yes.
grow and for me to scale, I need to implement these critical folks. I need to implement these critical platforms, and then reassess every 6 months, reassess every year, and see if you made the right decision. Because again, you're not always going to make the right decision. You're going to have to learn
Yeah.
from mistakes. You're going to have to do all the things that everybody else is doing. So I think that's the long answer to your short
No,
question.
I think that's super. There's a couple things I want to break out there that you mentioned, Matt. So, I think talking with a recruiter like yourself, Matt, and getting a sense of like, okay, this is the position that I think I'm looking to hire, right? So
Mhm.
I'm sure you have a good pulse on like, okay, here's kind of the benefits. here's what they're looking for out in the marketplace, but not just a salary, but whatever benefits. So so you in your mind can start preparing of like, what should that look like if I'm going to try and bring on this person, and then what would I actually, like you said, budgets and cents budget, your dollars and cents budgeting, like, okay, if I'm going to pay whatever 50,000, whatever the amount is, right? $100,000. Like, what does the return on that investment need to look like to justify the spending? Because then it's kind of a no-brainer if you can turn that into like a money-making machine, right? You're like, okay, well, if they do this, I will eventually get this on the return. So then, like you said at the very beginning of the podcast, I'm not leaving money on the table. Otherwise, I have to forego opportunities because I don't have the people to do that. It's kind of chicken and the egg type of a thing. Like,
Right.
you have to have the greater vision in there. And I like how you presented it, Matt. There's some different, maybe non-traditional ways. Don't have to always think automatically. I have a client right now that they're just her, and then we're looking to grow. But that doesn't mean you have to automatically bring on an employee. You said use the 1099 route, depending on where you're at, what's the nature of your business, how it's structured, where you are in the world. I am California. There's some other funky laws here, not funky, but just different things that require just to make
Right.
sure you're legally in compliance. But for the most part, when you're a small business, like you say, getting started, independent contractors is probably, like you said, a smart way to go. And then, obviously, if they're really talented and you really like these people, you're like, I'd really like to lock you in as an employee, in a good way. Like, hey, we're both going to benefit here. It's not as
Right.
transactional as a 1099 contractor.
Well, you also, with that, you think 1099 partnerships are not going to be as invested in your company.
Yep.
Um, some great advice that I got when I first started was no one is going to care as much about your company as you do.
Yep.
Just know that you're going to want to hire only folks that, drink the Kool-Aid, fall in line with the core principles and the
Yep.
mission and everything. And yeah, you do want to find those folks and they're there, but like they are not going to care as much about your business as you do. So once
Yep.
you understand that, then you have to say, okay, well, what's going to make them prioritize my business? Is it
Mhm.
going to be, a good person to work with, fun person to work with? Is it going to be good pay? So that's kind of what I kind of, with all of my 1099 partnerships, have really great commissions
Uh-huh.
because that's the incentive right there. I get it. Not everybody wants to, be locked down to a staffing, one staffing firm or startup or, any company, especially in this economic and job market. But, that was my differentiator there. And that's how I
Mhm.
was able to, be a little bit more enticing for folks to want to kind of work in under our business umbrella.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think we've got to think a little bit outside of the box of whether you're a 1099 or even an employee. I don't know, Matt, but I would love your take on this, because I think like things are shifting, and how do we, especially when we're talking not entry level, I'm talking higher level
Mhm.
hires, but looking at compensation, or what does that arrangement look like? Because I think nowadays people, since COVID, right? I don't know. Most people are not saying I want to come to the office 5 days a week if you're in a service based industry, right?
Right.
Or it's not that they're opposed to it, but I don't want. We're seeing a mandate, especially in the public sector, particularly in some of the larger private or companies have started to push on this, but they've
Mhm.
gotten pushed back.
Right.
And so like that's just one example, but like, or maybe it's not the direct bottom line salary, but what is it to me to go to a professional development, getting coached, or going to different events, or what does that look like? Maybe it's a combination. So I feel like I'd love to get your take on what should companies be thinking about, and is it, because sometimes it's just a one size fits all. We've got a wide spectrum right now in generations in the marketplace and what motivates them. And so
Yep.
I feel sometimes they think it's a one size fits all. Boom, this is it. Everybody should love this. What can
Mhm.
you speak to a little bit about that?
I think that the last few years have completely changed the entire work dynamic for the world, but primarily for the U.S. and the professional services sector.
Yeah.
With that, I've seen some hot takes about companies that do the 100% back to office mandate, and they just use that as a form of layoff because there's going to be a lot of folks They do it. They said, hey, we told everybody to come back. We lost 18% of our workforce in a number of different verticals, and cool, we're going to move forward. So that I've heard that take, and it does make sense. But I think from just a company culture standpoint, we've all seen the internet jokes about a pizza party will only go so far, or
Yep.
ping pong table in the break room will only keep so many employees. I think it's a communication function. I think not just the doing things like exit interviews because it's too
Yep.
late then. Why did you leave the company? I didn't like XYZ. This wasn't, whatever the case is. But I think doing, what if you just do like stay interviews? Hey, you're currently with the company. Why? And, kind
Yeah,
of
that's great. Yeah.
create that, just things like that to learn, because there could be an old style executive that thinks that, having beers on Friday at the office, maybe that's the men, the culture needed to keep folks there. Is that for everybody? Probably not, but you won't know if you don't ask your folks, hey, what do you really, what's really going to make you value this company? What's going to make you prioritize this work versus, somebody at dialed in staffing saying, oh, you can do XYZ over here to 99,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's a communication function with your workforce to see what's keeping them going to work and not screaming in their car in the parking lot during their lunch break, to make folks want to come to work.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that idea of a interview, Matt. That's a great idea. And I think doing more of that, um, intentionally, about what is keeping you there. I would also probably add to that is, you know, you're doing regular performance reviews or assessments, or is there a feedback loop as to what the employee is looking to achieve, where they're trying to go, and where the company's at, and are we all in alignment, or are we diverging at some point, and how do we hopefully get back on the same page if possible. So I think that's really important to look at. Yeah, and interestingly, I didn't really think about that. What you were saying, as a layoff mechanism, bringing people back to work.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're gonna lose people for sure, that just aren't into
Well, with
that.
everything going on in the markets right now, and that have been going on in the markets, there is a lot less trust that employees have in a company, especially a larger
Yeah,
company. Like if
yeah,
you, if I was in the job market and I was wanting to work for a company, I would just Google how many layoffs they've done in the last 4 years, and if they've done a ton of layoffs, then I'd avoid that company because
yeah,
there's I think it's becoming more and more employees are becoming more and more aware that even if you do a great job, uh, sometimes there's things outside of your control that that can get you the axe. And without diving too deep into it, we're seeing that for the first time in the government sector. That used to be a stable job, and then now government employees are finally susceptible to the same tortures of workplace dependability as the corporate sector has seen for the last 5 years, but definitely the last 15 or 20 years.
yeah,
So it's now the same way that I said no employee's going to care about your business as much as you do. Uh, from the candidate standpoint, nobody is going to be your advocate more than you need to be.
yeah,
And you always need to make sure what's the best course of action for you, your career, keeping the lights on at the house, keeping mouths fed, things like that, because no one's going to be your advocate for you unless you do it yourself.
yeah. 100%. One other thing, and we're getting close to the end of the podcast, but you triggered something in my mind when you're talking about state interviews. I was literally talking to a former company I worked with, and we were talking about the challenges of businesses, especially smaller businesses. I'm not talking such a gigantic companies, but let's
Mhm.
just say less than 100 employees.
Mhm.
What can employers do with third party like websites? I'm going to throw out like Glassdoor or even Indeed, which I know it's just an online one of recruiting and hiring, where they're getting most people go online for company reviews because they didn't have a positive experience, generally speaking.
Right.
Um, it's not they don't you know they're going to give a review. So what could you say to a company so they can be proactive in trying to address that, especially when you're a small company. Because if you got one or two or of just a handful of reviews and it's negative, and then
Right.
you're the recruiter, right? You're trying to get somebody in there and like, oh, let's get with this company. Like, well, it says this, and da da da. What can you do? Like, I'm thinking of the stay interview is one tool, but what are some feedback there that you can help employers and also employees, potential clients, kind of look at that with a little bit of grain of salt, and what's your feedback there?
Well, I think you need to be proactive about it, because
Mhm.
just sitting there and looking at your reviews, I mean, I think for Dialed In Staffing, I think we have 1 3-star review from some person in Dallas that said everybody was nice, but the benefits weren't that good. And like we've never placed any, like we didn't have any W-2 employees in Dallas this year. So I was just like, I don't,
And where did this come
okay.
from?
Yeah. But then again, I'm not super proactive of every contractor or every person that we've placed saying, pushing, will you please give us a review? We'd really appreciate it if you just said how your experience was. You can absolutely be honest.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of companies do that very well, primarily real estate brokerages,
Uh-huh.
because reviews and SEO are kind of the two big things, along with referrals. But outside of referrals are really big things that come in. And I've seen some tools of let's have a challenge to see who gets the most of their previous customers or previous clients to leave a review. Whoever has the highest success rate gets $100
Whatever.
here, day off or whatever the case is. So incentivizing the proactivity there, because you can't just sit back and say, I'm going to do a really good job and I hope folks leave me a good review. Because especially in the corporate staffing space, there could be somebody that we place for a client on the other side of the country, and for some reason they didn't have a good experience, or whatever the case was, and then they leave Dialed In Staffing a 1-star review because they didn't like the client that we placed them for, and then
Yeah.
that has all types of downstream negative effects. So
Uh-huh.
that's something that we have to always be mindful of. But then, if you're going to counteract against, the passive negative reviews, because they're going to happen
Yep.
regardless. Um, have folks be more proactive about the good experiences that they have.
Mhm.
Hopefully, the good experiences vastly outweigh the negative ones, and you end up getting a 4.8 or 4.9 out of 5 stars.
There you go. There you go. Oh, I have noticed not in the recruiting space, but I noticed if I leave a review online, like through Google, a Google Business or anything like that, I've noticed at least an uptick recently of those businesses responding, even if
Mhm.
it's a negative review, acknowledging it and saying, "I'm sorry you didn't have a good experience," or "Hey, can we
Right.
make it better next time?" So don't just like let it go unanswered, or at least like get in there and being like you're saying, Matt, being proactive.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
absolutely.
I have to do the same thing for Red 7 social media. At
Mhm.
uh, quick plug, Red 7 is on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. But I talk a lot about small business administration, veteran owned small business stuff, and just
Yep.
things like that. And every now and then somebody will, jump in the comments and say, I don't think this is right because of XYZ. And if you just politely engage with them and say, well, actually, the SBA needs you to have this to do that, and then you do the handshake emoji, and then everything's fine. So instead of, kind of just creating that, addressing folks' concerns, uh,
Mhm.
you know, politely telling them that they may be misinformed or a little bit incorrect. I
Yep.
would do the same thing if I had, if I had a restaurant and they said, hey, service sucked because it took forever to get my bill. Hey, I'm
Yep.
sorry about that. I appreciate the feedback. We'll definitely, incorporate that into our training and make sure that things get better, whatever the case is. So again, I think that falls into that proactivity there of,
Yeah.
don't just let folks be unhappy with your, their experience with your company. Like, let them know you hear them and that you're going to, you're going to do better. And we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Absolutely. Well, we're getting close to the end of that podcast, Matt. There's so many good things we covered today. I hope everyone's been listening in and taking some nuggets. There's plenty of them. I'm going to put your contact information in our show notes, Matt, so people can connect with Dialed In 7 and also Red 7 Strategy Group. So you guys can connect with Matt. We're both on LinkedIn as well. So reach out to us there. Matt, as kind of final takeaways here, as we're wrapping up the podcast episode today, for employers and employees, veteran-owned businesses, just out of all the things that we've talked about, covered today, what would be kind of your key takeaways?
That's a good question. We dove into a wide scope of things.
Yeah, just to you, like, hey, if I have to leave you with a couple of things to think about or consider currently right now in the hiring space and the veteran-owned space, what would you just leave with folks to consider?
Well, I would say it doesn't matter if you're if you're a candidate that is looking for a job, if you're an employer trying to navigate the hiring process, if you're a small business trying to get new business, or if you're a large business trying to keep business, just know that everybody's doing their best. You need to do your best as well. It all comes down to maximum effort. If you really want a great hiring process, do all the things you need to do. If you're a candidate, do all the things you need to do. Get your networking, get your applications, get your all that stuff. So maximum effort. We're all doing the best we can.
Yeah. And that's what we want to find, bringing folks like yourself, Matt, on the podcast here, finding people that are giving maximum effort. We're coming here providing you value, insight, so that you can see, taste, test, if you will. Hey, is this somebody that says what they say they're going to do? Follow up. And I can say, Matt, yeah, definitely is one. That's why I had him on the podcast. Matt, I really appreciate you being here. Well, I'm sure we'll have you back again. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, and I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a great time. I think we solved a lot of problems out there.
There we go. So thanks everybody for listening in. Please, of course, like and subscribe. We are on YouTube and all the other podcast platforms. So find out whatever your favorite one is, and come back and visit us again next time. Thanks everybody for listening.